What's up, everybody? Okay, I'm back. Today I want to talk about some real stuff. Shout out to Clamps Casino, real-ish from real. Let's go. All right. I made a video talking about Charlie Kirk, and this is before we knew who the shooter was. Okay, and now that we know who the shooter is, and we have an idea of, the motivation of what made him do what he did will kind of really surface in the coming, let's say, weeks. But in a way, it's interesting because the nature of people who do extreme shit, the motivation is almost never 100% clear, if that makes sense. Even when they say, this is why I did this, there's still that like, but what was that switch that really, because it's one thing, obviously ideology plays a massive role, but making that switch to do that evil shit is really something dark that we still, obviously, human beings will interrogate till the end of time. Okay? But the reason I bring this up is because I noticed, for example, going on that I think is actually really fucking disturbing. I notice, I would say arguably primarily the left, that are really erasing the shooter's existence in a sense and erasing the motivation of the shooter. And they're spending so much time really blaming the victim. And that's Charlie Kirk. They're spending a lot of time. I see it online. You see it online. Charlie Kirk said this. He said this questionable thing. He said that questionable thing. And it's very, very disturbing, in my honest opinion. Partly because when you look at what Charlie Kirk actually said, I would say 9 times out of 10, they're not nearly as bad as the people are portraying it to be. They're deliberately missing or leaving stuff out that he said to clarify that position, which I think is disingenuous and frankly disturbing. But the other part of it that also is, it doesn't actually matter what Charlie Kirk said or didn't say. I said this in my video before. Whether Charlie Kirk is a racist or not is irrelevant, actually. Whether he advocated for gun violence or didn't is irrelevant. The truth of the matter is, it is wrong, full stop, to kill someone for having a point of view by just expressing it in speech. And that's exactly what happened. So now, we know the outcome. We know that the shooter, again, this is where I talk about the erasure of the shooter. We know that the shooter committed the act to silence speech he didn't like. Okay? That is wrong. There's no debate about what the person said is actually irrelevant. Now, I know that news stories, the way the media operates is, this is a very fascinating news story. It's a very sad one. It reaches a lot of people. So it's because they don't have as much details on the shooter, and Charlie Kirk is more known, and there's things to be mined there, right? It's just basic math in dollars and ad spend, right? Let's focus on the time talking about Charlie. We can get a reaction. People don't like him. Some people like him, blah, blah. But of course, it's wrong. And I would argue that there's definitely people in the media who, in my opinion, the media reporting tends to run skew left. They're doing this deliberately to obscure or obfuscate the motivations of the shooter. Because the shooter, from what we understand, was a lefty. Let's just be honest about this. Not that it matters, and I will get to why this doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But we know that the shooter had fascist, anti-fascist writing on the bullet casings. It's said, again, this is hearsay to a certain extent, but it's somewhat reported that friends say that he was a lefty in a big family of Republican folk. Right? It's also alleged that he had some sort of transgender boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. I'm sorry. I don't know. Don't care. But the point is, he's in that sort of world. And so he clearly runs more left. Let's just call it what it is. And of course, the media is going to pretend like this is not the case. They'll say, oh, he was from a Republican family. Did the family carry out the shooting? Like, what kind of shit is this? This is ridiculous. Talk about him. But again, it's all erasure of the shooter's motivation and who the shooter is. And that is wild to me. But this is what we expect really from grievance culture. And I want to talk about this because this is actually the crux of the matter. I won't play this video, but I urge you to watch this. This is actually a very good video. It's short. Whether you like Ben Shapiro or not, I can't tell you that I'm a huge Ben Shapiro fan. I don't, okay? I've seen some videos. I like some things he says. There are other things he says I don't agree with, right? But ultimately, and they raise a really good point here because they do talk about the woke right, quote unquote. And this idea of grievance culture, you wronged me so I can destroy you, which is at the heart of identity politics and a lot of this bullshit that you're hearing, can come from either side. It can come from the left, it can come from the right. It's a problem, it's a grievance culture issue. It primarily, if you were to ask my honest opinion, primarily it is coming from the left. But again, it is not exclusive to the left. It can absolutely show up in the right. And this is what you're kind of seeing with quote unquote the woke right. And that's why ultimately this is the real problem. The real issue here is grievance culture. And this is what I think most people maybe feel. Maybe they can't articulate it, but this is the essence of the problem. We have gotten way too far into grievance culture. My identity was wronged. I'm queer. I'm black. And so because of this, I'm going to destroy this institution. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or I'm going to destroy you. I don't have sympathy for you because I'm black. Does that make sense? It's like the humanity is ebbing away because I'm grievanced. And this is the core of the problem. Now, the other side of this, and again, you're going to say he's shilling, but if you really look at the biggest target of grievance culture, guess who it is? The Jews. In general, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Jews are by far, if you ask my honest opinion, the biggest recipients of the grievance culture attacks because it goes into conspiratorial territory. And the problem with grievance culture is that it erases the motivation and agency of the individual. Now, all of a sudden, everything in your life, all the problems you have are the result of someone else, an overpowered Jew or whoever, who is systematically destroying you. And you have no agency. And again, this is where terrorists can really exploit this. Because it's easy for them. They are able to do crazy shit and erase their motivations. Or just whitewash or let's say sanitize their motivations to the point where you don't even realize that that's what they're doing. Right? Oh, I was grievanced, so I went and raped a bunch of people. Right? Now, they won't put it that way though. So I was grievanced, so I attacked people, because they attacked me first. But it's like, yeah, but what's the agency? Why exactly did you do what you did? What did you do exactly? Those are the questions no one wants to talk about. In grievance culture, that stuff's erased. Now, in terms of the conspiracy side of things, the grievance culture, the reason why, again, I would argue Jews really feel this, and it can come from either side, is when you look at it, right? What did the left talk about when it comes to these conspiracy theories about the Jews? Military-industrial complex, they run the banking system. The reason they're poor is because the Jews run all the banks, blah, blah. And then on the right, you have this white nationalism, replacement theory garbage. The Jews just want to replace us, all this kind of weird shit. The Jews want to kill our Christian babies. So again, you have to see that this kind of behavior is really, it's irrelevant whether you're a left or a right. It's about whether or not you have a propensity to believe conspiracy theories, and two, if you have a authoritarian sort of streak to you. And there are people like this who have this sort of, I want to assert my dominance, my opinion on others, and I don't want them to have a dissenting opinion. And the moment they have a dissenting opinion, I want them taken out. And those people can come from the left or right, as I've stated. This is the issue. And until people keep it real and talk about this is what leads to violence like this, killing an innocent man just for speaking, we are not going to address the problem. Because at the end of the day, Charlie Kirk was not a politician. Okay, you guys can sit here and say, well, it's political. I mean, he's a political individual in the sense that he's interested in politics, but he's not a politician. Okay, he's a guy who wanted to stand up and speak and say something. The last thing I'm going to point on this video is actually quite good. I recommend watching this one as well. Shout out to Comical Opinions. In fact, I'm going to subscribe to you, my man, because you said some really touching shit in here. Or just smart stuff. You might know this story about DC's Red Hood writer who criticized, well, not just criticized, was saying heinous shit about Charlie Kirk. Hope the bullet's okay, after Charlie. I mean, like, wild shit, right? And again, let's be honest here. A lot of this grievance culture stuff, like I said, it can come from either side, okay? But it's primarily coming from the left, okay? Like people like Gretchen Falker-Martin, who feel like because I'm a certain identity and this identity is systematically discriminated against, therefore I am allowed to have heinous and inhumane viewpoints and actions. And I think that's wrong. Listen, as a black male, is the system against me certain things? Of course it is. Okay? You don't have to tell me about systematic racism. I'm very familiar with it. And I've worked jobs, it would shock you the kind of shit that I've experienced. In the film business, outside the film business, from left woke people who are some of the worst at this, who have been some of the most racist people in my life to me, period. But at the same time, I also have agency as a human being, right? You cannot remove the agency part. Okay, that's why I don't sit there and say, oh, it's all the fault of the white man or whatever, because that's ridiculous. Black folk, black people have agency, right? Now, what we should be doing is, yes, if there are systematic things issues that cause us to discriminate against different people, of course, we should do our best to erase those and do our best to get rid of those so everyone has equal opportunity. But what we should not be doing is destroying cultural institutions or destroying people because we feel that we have a grievance. Because that's, again, where these terrorists come through. And look, listen, I know all these so-called black individuals and others, at least in Toronto, and who I've integrated with, and people I know, who talk a lot of this pro-black shit. Deep down, these people will throw the black community under the bus fast as fuck. And they profit off of the so-called grievance culture of, we need we need money to come through to help black people, and then they keep it for themselves and secretly date white people and want white things. And look, listen, again, I'm not out here dick watching. I'm not out here pocket watching, but I do notice a hypocrite. I can smell a fraud a mile away. I don't have time for that shit, okay? A lot of these people are fucking frauds. I'm sorry for my language, but I gotta say it up front. The people that invest in grievance culture are some of the most intolerant, fraudulent people you will ever meet. And they do not care about the so-called identity even they themselves stand in. That identity is a tool for them to acquire power in an authoritarian type of style. And trust me, they will throw their own people under the bus if those people do not have the same opinion as them. Guaranteed, or is somehow a threat to them, okay? I don't have time for frauds. But to come back to this particular article, so long story short, Gretchen, who's this writer no one's really heard of, respectfully, says some crazy shit and she gets canned, as she should. But what I think is really interesting about this article, and frankly I do think that you should read or watch this video, is the person who made the comical opinions really traces and says, well, who hired this individual? So Gretchen, I believe, may be trans, I might be wrong, but the hirer, the person who works at DC who hired this guy, sorry, is also trans. And it's the same sort of victimhood nonsense. A lot of these people that are on the boat who are saying these heinous things, a lot of them are untalented, mediocre. This is why they have the envy. This is why they attack people who have done things. This is why a lot of times, again, they have this sort of conspiratorial, authoritarian streak, because it's a way of compensating for their lack of talent and their lack of actual intellectual processing power. This is why it's easy for them to try and tear down things instead of working with people, right? I've seen this a mile away, and this kind of attitude is why I think people are saying enough is enough. And I'm frankly one of them. Enough is enough. And the more that we hopefully explore these, the more we'll start to clean out these kind of losers, because they are losers. Don't get it twisted. Hopefully they can adapt and they can change and become better individuals. Like my man in Comical Opinion said, it's human. Unfortunately, it's a human side of us to hate, right? It is what it is, but we can't let hate infest our way of thinking, right? But for now, maybe you got to take a little break, because there's a lot of people in the art space, in the media space, in other aspects, judicial, who have used grievance culture to come up. But these are mediocre people. That's what's so really scary about it. And they now hold positions of power, and that's why they're out here shilling for Hamas, terrorists, and all these kind of things, because A, themselves, they're mediocre, and B, they in a way relate to Hamas, because Hamas and people like that are massive on grievance culture. Okay? People forget one of the biggest lessons that you can learn, and I don't like to necessarily go into this rabbit hole about Hitler and things like that, because Hitler is just one of many evil people, right? But somehow he's turned into like the definition of evil, which again, I saw in an interesting video, someone was saying how wild that is, because if you say someone is the devil, people are like, oh, okay, huh? But if you say someone is Hitler, people are like, but it's like the devil is way worse than Hitler. Like, what are you talking about? But that's the whole point. This is this idea of constantly calling things Hitler, constantly calling people fascist. Again, this is some stuff coming mostly from the left, right? To basically allow violence or encourage violence against people you disagree with. But the point is this. If you look at Hitler, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, the Palestinian struggle, okay? Osama bin Laden's struggle. If you go and look at that stuff, it's all this grievance culture bullshit, okay? And that's got to stop. Get away. And on that note, I say peace. Thank you for watching. Love y'all.